evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to All Era Sports with Sirhan, live on this 9th of February 2026. As I come to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Here's hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful day today and a wonderful weekend. NFL season officially over. I'll touch on the Super Bowl here in a second. And a polarizing day in all pop culture that centers around a pop culture icon. I'll touch on that here in a minute. Also, still an ongoing debate for a certain fighter who still can't let go his famous losses. Lots to get to here. I'll touch on that here in a second. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Let's go get right down to it. It is, yes, last night, of course, it was Super Bowl 60, where the Seattle Seahawks just dominated the New England Patriots. I said before, I said on all my telecasts, and I'll say it again, that New England had no way to test the Seattle defense throughout the entire game, and they didn't. Because they didn't have the playmakers. They didn't have the play calling necessary to challenge one of the better defenses in the league this season, who was number one in points allowed per game. And if you're going to test a defense like that, you better take shots. The Patriots did not do that. And that's why Seattle's defense just feasted and basically was feeding families all night long. Derek Hall, the 2 sacks and the forced fumble. Byron Murphy, the 2 sacks and a fumble recovery. Devin Witherspoon with 2 sacks. And the capper was Uchenna Nwasu with the rip away from Drake Maye for the pick 6 that basically ended it. And that is why that game turned out the way it did. And that's why, in the end, the New England Patriots just had it handed to them by the best team in the NFL, who maybe in hindsight was essentially the best team in the NFL all season long. And that's what you had last night in the Super Bowl. And it was pegged as a 4.5-point spread, which I thought was being generous to the New England Patriots, because the Seattle Seahawks just were beating the top teams in the NFC throughout most of the season. And we consider they played the toughest division. We had the Rams and the 49ers each with 11 wins apiece. And the Seahawks took care of them before they got to the Super Bowl. That 4 to 5 point spread was a little bit on the light side. But whatever it was, the Seahawks probably would have covered it because they did anything and everything they wanted to. And that's why we had what we had last night. And kudos to the Seahawks. Mike McDonald, second year after leaving Baltimore. Last year they went 10 games. This year, picked it up where they left off. Got the NFC West title, the 1 seed, and marched their way to the Super Bowl. It's their moment. It's their time. It was well-deserved, well-earned. Probably in hindsight, wire to wire, the best team in the NFL, because they did it as a whole. And that's how you win games at the most biggest moments as a team and as a whole. And that's why the Seahawks did it. Now we touch on the losing team, the New England Patriots. And, of course, a lot of hub about Drake Maye. Well, he's been to a Super Bowl more than 2/3 of the league, so he gets that. The schedule merchant talk is just absolutely moronic. It's absolutely cowardly, because no one said the New England Patriots were going to have a new dynasty like they had with Brady and Belichick. Even Patriots fans couldn't be that stupid. So spare me the baloney when it comes to the start of Drake Maye being gift-wrapped an easy schedule, because we've seen easier schedules where teams don't get anywhere near that point. Actually, there was one 2 years ago who had a 4th-place schedule and only finished 9-8 to miss the postseason. And that's why this whole schedule merchant thing is just for people who never had the balls to get off the couch and pick up a football in their lives. And that's the problem we talk about them. This team, the centerpiece of this team, was so young, and you don't know what was going to go into the season. A lot of people thought they would be a wild card team. Yours truly being one of them. The last thing they expected was for the Patriots to win the East, come out of the AFC. They did that. So they did something right, despite being schedule merchants. So that's for people who are fake tough guys behind a mobile device. and it's basically mainly Bills fans, which the same Bills fans who hasn't been to a Super Bowl since the Jim Kelly years, and they're the ones that need to exclude themselves from the conversation because they have no room. That's exactly what happened on that day. So, but moving forward, it's going to be interesting what they do because the play calling in that game on their behalf, when you talk about the Patriots before I proceed, was absolutely abysmal. It's largely because due to a lack of playmakers. And if you're going to play a good defense like the Seahawks, how they like to just sometimes mix up in the zone, shoot the gaps, even do a nickel and a dime blitz like they did with Devin Witherspoon, you better have playmakers who could challenge that. And the New England Patriots didn't. And it played right into the hands of the Seattle Seahawks. And that's why the Seattle Seahawks are celebrating the Super Bowl and the Patriots aren't. But it's a nice accomplishment getting to the Super Bowl. And we know it's going to be tough moving forward because we saw it with Dan Marino back in '84 after he lost to Joe Montana in Super Bowl 19, how he never got back. There's work to be done in New England if they want to get back there, simply because the AFC is going to be rough moving forward. Because AFC, we know Kansas and Baltimore are going to be back in it. Cincinnati, if the Bengals fans can stop being cowards, they can be back in it. If the Bills fans can shut up, they can be in it. And some other teams like the Jaguars, the Chargers, and the Texans, they're going to be in it. So the AFC is going to be tough. And it's going to be tough for the New England Patriots to get back. But they make the right moves. They can't get back. But it's going to take a lot moving forward. Anyways, calling this a worst performance for Drake Maye. Newsflash, they're playing the number one ranked defense in the Seattle Seahawks. That's why the performance was as bad as it was. Didn't help that Will Campbell, their left tackle, played like a deer in the headlights, where he was just absolutely terrible last night, giving up constant QB pressures and sacks on the left tackle on the opposite of Drake Maye, especially the one that set up the forced fumble. They have work to do moving forward. Got some retooling to do on the offensive line front. And they do need playmakers all over the place. Because if you're relying on the corpse of Stephon Diggs to be your number one playmaker, you're not going anywhere. And that's why the New England Patriots are bringing the Lombardi to Boston. That Lombardi trophy is headed to the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. Yeah, the Patriots fans are feeling nostalgic because of the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. But I think the best thing that happened was they could pause for a minute because this is a Brady and Belichick. It's Mike Vrabel and Drake Maye. But a bigger loss in this is more on Josh McDaniels, our offensive coordinator, because the offensive play calls were just terrible. But it also didn't help. They were lacking in playmakers, and that's why the Patriots aren't celebrating the Super Bowl. Case closed. Now back to the winners. So for the Seahawks, huge credit to GM John Snyder. Remember, this is the architect of the Legion of Boom era with Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Bobby Wagner, Cliff Averill, Bruce Irwin, and them guys putting that roster together, going back-to-back and winning the Super Bowl in 2013. And after a downturn and hitting the bottom, he hires Mike McDonald, from Baltimore. And in 2 years, he retools this team. We talk about drafting guys like Jackson Smith-Ajibba, Nick Emenwari, and bringing a guy like Devin Witherspoon, and drafting Byron Murphy at the defensive tackle out of Texas. For him to go from up to down, back to up. And I don't know what the criteria is for a Hall of Fame bid for those in the front office, but it might be time to consider it for John Snyder. We consider the moves he made, and consider 2 eras of Seattle football to bring home 2 Super Bowls in 2 decades. What an architect. And moving forward, this team is going to have 70+ million in cap space. So they might be able to add more help down the line as long as they draft well and sign quality free agents. it's going to be pretty well. Now, of course, the bigger question is going to be what becomes of Kenneth Murray III? We're going to find out because he's an unrestricted free agent. And we know in the NFL, overpaying for a running back can be an interesting concept. But I'd be surprised if he's wearing another uniform next season. Because I expect him and Kenneth Walker and the Seattle Seahawks to find a way to work something out. Unless someone wants to throw the bank at him, then it'll probably be crazy not to take it. But John Schneider has this franchise back on the up. And we talk about what they have coming up in the next couple years off-season wise with the free agency and potential dead weight and draft picks. He could put something more together, and this team is going to be in the mix for quite a while because they have everything there. The foundation is set, and they can just plug and play moving forward. And the NFC is going to be difficult. It is. You're in the same division as the Rams and the 49ers. Let's start that for beginners. But the Seahawks will be in it. They're still going to be a tough out. And as long as Mike McDonald is there and that defense continues to play the way they are, they're always going to have a chance. That's why they say defense wins championships. They're the example of it, and that's why they did it last night. And we talk about the Seattle Seahawks on the defense. Two guys I want to center on the offense. Let's start with Cooper Kupp. He got written off and just got shipped out after a great career with the LA Rams. Many thought he was done. He signs with Seattle. And we think about what he did last night. While the New England Patriots were so fixated on Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp makes key catches to the tune of 6 for 61 yards, but a couple key ones to keep drives alive. And to end this season with his second Super Bowl in 5 years, after the Rams has basically just kicked him to the curb, that should tell you Cooper Kupp is as good as anyone. And he might not be the Cooper Kupp of 5 years ago when he was the Offensive Player of the Year and the Super Bowl MVP. But he can still make the big plays. He still can make the right plays. And after the Rams has basically told him to get out, he found a home in Seattle. It was basically a homecoming being from that part of town. To end it with a Super Bowl ring for the second time in his career says a lot about him and his dedication to the game. And he made some of the key catches to keep early drives alive while the New England Patriots were so fixated on Jackson Smith-Njigba. He found a way to get open, and that was where able to set up a couple of those early field goals to get the early separation from the Seahawks to the Patriots. And for him to get to this point is one of the real great stories in the NFL this season that didn't really have much. But 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, and after basically being told by the Rams, you're done, he goes to Seattle basically as a second or third option opposite Jackson Smith-Njigba and eventually Rashid Shaheed after he was picked up by the Saints, but stepped up while the defenses were so fixated on Smith-Njigba and Shaheed and made key plays to keep drives alive for Seattle, which tells you the impact he still had. And to cap it off with his second Super Bowl in 5 years after being told he was done in LA must be very satisfying for him and his family, who, of course, took the picture with the Lombardi Trophy after the Super Bowl win. Kudos to Cooper Kupp. Still has enough game left in the tank to be a solid contributor. Showed it last night. I want to talk about being kicked to the curb. Sam Darnold. Yeah, he didn't play great last night. He just made the throws necessary to keep drives alive and, of course, got going late. But after what you went through with New York, after what you went through with Carolina, and having been Brock Purdy's backup in San Francisco when they went to the Super Bowl, to come here after everything that was written against you, and not to mention after Minnesota chose J.J. McCarthy over you, you go to Seattle and everyone maligns the Seahawks for taking the chance on the contract that was given to him. But he answered every call he could probably do this season the best he can. Yes, he led the league in turnovers. That's never going to change. But key throws at key times throughout the season and playing turnover-free football in the playoffs and Super Bowl to the tune of no turnovers. And that's despite making very risky throws throughout the entire postseason and the Super Bowl. And to end it with being crowned the phrase champion next to your name goes to show that given the right opportunity and in the right situation, you can succeed. And that's what he did. Yes, he did not play great in the Super Bowl. It is true. He was good, but not great. But the totality of him this season, and we consider them getting the number one seed and just handling the 49ers and the Rams, and him going toe-to-toe with the MVP, Matthew Stafford, in the NFC title game, and to come back to do what he did last night to get the Super Bowl win. The Seattle Seahawks won all of this because of him, not in spite of him. And no one was asking this guy to be the second coming of anybody. Just know your role, fill it, make the plays to the playmakers, and that's what he did all season long. And to cap it off last night with a Super Bowl and one of the great careers of redemption, seasons of redemption, that was what Sam Darnold did last night. And you can nitpick it all you want. You can cherry pick it all you want. And of course, Sam Darnold said for the longest time he was seeing the ghost when he was in New York with the Jets, and it was a bad situation. To go from where he was early in his career with the Jets and the Panthers, and at one point being the backup to Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl loss to Kansas City a couple years back, to being the key piece of the best team in the NFL and at least the NFC in the Seattle Seahawks, and playing this with a contract that everyone thought he was crazy to get, and to finish it with a Super Bowl ring, says a lot about Sam Darnold. And it can be nitpicked all you want. You can cherry pick it all you want. It doesn't matter. The story is he's a Super Bowl champ. The Seattle Seahawks got to this point because of him. He had some key games, especially the NFC title game against the Rams, where he went toe-to-toe with Matthew Stafford to get to that point. And the Super Bowl run, he was a key part of it, no matter how hard you slice it up. They won because of him, not in spite of him. And that's the difference. And that's why Sam Darnold, after everything he went through, it stops like the Panthers and the Jets, finally found the perfect landing spot for him and is a champion. Nitpick it all you want. Cherry pick it all you want. Doesn't matter. As Mike McDonald said to him after the game, you're a Super Bowl champion. No one can take it away from you. That's the final story. Salute Sam Darnold. Crazy thing is, he's only like 28 or 29, if I'm correct. And he's younger than some of these elite quarterbacks. And when you think about what he went through and to get to this point, at that age, you thought maybe the guy was in his early 30s or something. The guy hasn't hit 30. And he went through everything. Might be a great thing moving forward for him. And they talk about Darnold magic. Sam Darnold had a lot of magic at times this season. He had a lot of a dark magic, which that especially the first game against the Rams in LA, where he had all those interceptions. But the totality is Sam Darnold made the plays he needed to make to get Seattle wins in the regular season and in the postseason. And because of that, that's why he's standing in the end. And you can nitpick the contract all you want, especially those people at the four-letter network who still criticize it. But at the end of the day, the result of the contract turned out to be a well-invested contract that netted them quite the result, which is the best team in the end, the last team standing. Wonderful story. Don't know what's going to be for him down the line, but he could, whatever happens to him moving forward, because who knows? You can't take this away from him. It'll probably forever be the gratification, a satisfaction for him in his NFL career, where everybody's going to nitpick it, as I said, but this will be forever his crowning glory. I'll touch more on the NFL later this week. The offseason is about to begin. And of course, one last one before I wrap it up. The official announcement of the Raiders hiring Clint Kubiak as their head coach. With they draft Fernando Mendoza in the first round, as they expect, Fernando Mendoza, Alshon Jeffrey, and Brock Bowers, with a guy like Clint Kubiak, they may start to get a direction going a little bit. Don't know what it means in the long term, but that's at least a good start. You have the nice foundation if you can get that. Crazy, because there was a time where the Raiders were the gold standard franchise of the NFL way back. And I mean way back. This is before they became what they became over the last couple decades. Way back in the 70s and 80s, especially under John Madden, they were the gold standard flagship franchise in the NFL with about a handful of others. At the time of the AFL-NFL merger, they were the key component. We talk about the late Al Davis. And people like to see them go back, because when the Raiders are good, it's something to talk about because they draw. You want to talk about fan bases that draw haters. Before the Patrick Mahomes run and the Tom Brady run, the Oakland Raiders drew all of that. When they were the Oakland Raiders and the LA Raiders, because of the just win baby mantra of Al Davis. And because of that, nobody liked them. And they were, and that's what they wanted. That's why when John Madden coached them, they were called the Renegade Raiders. But they get Clint Kubiak, and they draft Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall to pair with Alshon Jeffrey and Brock Bowers. They could go back to that stature and distinction of the most hated team in the NFL again, because when the Raiders were successful, nobody liked them. And of course, there's a lot of other reasons for it. But if they get to that point, it's going to be wild like it was back in the 70s. It's going to take some time, but that'll be a good start for them. Interesting how drafts work and how people just want to hit the bottom is all of a sudden think they come up to the top and have a one-hit sensation. Doesn't work like that in the NFL because of all the parity. And if you're a one-hit sensation, you can be that one-hit sensation for 1 year and just hit the tanks. And it'll be forever for you guys to get to that point. Look at the Seahawks as the example. Under Legion of Boom, they were one of the better teams in the league. Hit the downturn at the end of the Pete Carroll era. Bring in Mike McDonald. Last night, they found themselves back on top. So that ends the NFL segment. Now to the world of boxing. Actually, speaking of careers of redemption, we talk about Sam Darnold. I'm going to touch on one that took place 34 years ago. This involves an all-time great who completely was written off, who, when he came back, people were wondering why. But what he did 34 years ago in Atlantic City, closed mouths, and just basically had a case of turning back the hands of time to a case of where everybody's asking, oh, how do we forget? It was a night that Larry Holmes put on that old master left jab of his as a clinic to beat down Ray Mercer. After the 2 losses to Michael Spinks, a lot was written about Larry Holmes, and people were calling for him to simply retire, which he technically did. Stayed away for a while until early 1991 when he was fighting on the old USA Tuesday Night Fights network. Basically just fighting whatever opponent is available, didn't matter how good or how bad you were, as a way to, stay active, stay in the ring, maybe collect a few paychecks along the way. Hopefully, maybe he can get a shot sometime. He put together the equivalent of a 4-fight win streak before the night of February 7th, 1992, And that was when he fought the young upstart Ray Mercer out of Atlantic City, or at that time, Newark, New Jersey. And this is a Ray Mercer who just came off the begrudging of Tommy Morrison and just won one of those third-tier belts from Francesco Damiani on a haymaker left hook. And you thought going into this fight, after that Larry Holmes bit off more than what he can chew. But he had an interview with Jim Lampley the weekend before this fight. And I still remember this. The extreme confidence Larry Holmes said, like low-key guaranteeing that he's going to beat Ray Mercer. If you watch this, you probably knew something was about to happen. Because when Larry Holmes is as calm and confident as he was in that interview, and just basically guaranteeing he was going to beat Ray Mercer, you knew he was going to do it. And what do you need for a guy who knows to come forward and come straight up as Mercer does? It's simple. The left jab. What was Larry Holmes' bread and butter? Simple. The left jab. And that's what he did. And it was basically a 2.5-to-1 fight in Mercer's favor for obvious reasons. And, we get it. And it was in Mercer's backyard. And the crowd was chanting for Mercer early. And it looked like Mercer was going to get another knockout because the shotgun jab that hurt Holmes in the first round. But as the fight was going on, Larry Holmes started to weather what Mercer was delivering. And about halfway through the second or the third rounds, that shotgun left jab, which has been Larry Holmes' bread and butter, started to have an impact. And it started to move Ray Mercer back. And now you had Ray Mercer second guessing whether he was going to try and get inside. Because he was trying to get inside, now Holmes was hitting him with 1-2s. And you had Ray Mercer just sitting there wondering what to do. And now you have Larry Holmes controlling the pace to his tempo. And Ray Mercer, after the third or fourth round, just stood there wondering what to do with this guy. I mean, he had Holmes pinned in the corner. What do you do? You're supposed to have a guy pinned in the corner? You go to the body. Ray Mercer didn't do that. And because he didn't do that, Larry Holmes just showed the whole world how easy a fight can be if you have a great left jab. And that great left jab was his bread and butter, which had him that 7.5-year run of 20 successful title defenses. And he brought that to display once again as he just peppered Ray Mercer all night long with that jab. And as the fight was going on, Mercer was having less success trying to get inside it. And because he had less success, that's why that jab was just in his face all night long, to the tune of the equivalent of a 10-2 unanimous decision win for Larry Holmes on the basis of the left jab. You can see a lot of things as a fighter to get older. And we can talk about a lot of the physical aspects. Two things that doesn't go away. And we've seen it with several others. The punch. No one's going to mistake Larry Holmes for being George Foreman or Ernie Shavers. I get it. But it's still a respectable punch, especially in that left jab, because he had the kind of jab, if he puts you on the chin, you're taking a seat on the pants. And that's what Larry Holmes did on that night. And why was Larry Holmes able to use that jab to perfection against Ray Mercer? Years of intelligence, years of working at his craft, and because he had the intelligence up here, the experience, that's why he was able to use that jab to perfection and just peppered Ray Mercer to the tune of landed that thing at nearly 60% according to CompuBox. If you're landing 60% of your jabs against your opponent, you're going to win. That's what Larry Holmes did throughout his career. And he turned back the hands of time to do it again against this young upstart who was considered one of the young guns in the heavyweight division at that time, and had a mutual agreement to fight Evander Holyfield had Mercer beat Larry Holmes. But that didn't happen. Why? Because Ray Mercer was ill prepared to do anything to counteract to the jab of Larry Holmes. And because of it, that's why Larry Holmes won. And that's why Larry Holmes got the title shot against Evander Holyfield 4 months later and gave Evander Holyfield a better than expected fight. Even though he lost a close unanimous decision, he won for the last 5 rounds. Problem was Holyfield won 7 of the first 8 rounds. That was the difference. when you can take care of your body the way Larry Holmes did throughout his career, and he took care of it quite well. And when you have the ring smarts that he has, and you have the left jab that he possessed throughout his entire career, and is arguably the greatest in fight history, if you can have that, you're going to be successful regardless of age, regardless of era you're in, because Larry Holmes was the one who said it best. You have a left jab, things will be easier. That's what he did to Ray Mercer, a tough guy who took everything he could from Burt Cooper, Francesco Damiani, and Tommy Morrison and won those fights prior to this, but had no answers for the Larry Holmes bread and butter. And because he had no answers for it, that's why Larry Holmes did what he did 34 years ago tonight in Atlantic City. And there's no other way around it. You have a left jab, rest is history, and you can handle it. And the history of that left jab is simply put, he keeps you at the end of it. And not the fact he just throws it. He throws it with purpose. And he hits you with that left jab with purpose. Good luck trying to get inside, because it makes you think twice when you think about trying to get inside and fight inside that long reach of Larry Holmes. He's going to pepper you, and he's going to pepper you all night long. And I said this before. It's probably his third best win of his career, the top one being Ken Norton in Las Vegas when he won the title. Then, of course, Jerry Cooney with all the wild circumstances around it. And, of course, what took place with Ray Mercer when he was a 2.5-1 underdog, stunned the world against a young undefeated upstart. We talk about chip on your shoulder. Few, if any, had it like Larry Holmes. We think about the era he came in after Ali, being a bit of a grouch, which, for obvious reasons, understood. You're going to have a chip on your shoulder, and you're going to have the extra motivation to get yourself prepared. And when you have the extra motivation to get yourself prepared with that chip on your shoulder, you're going to have more success than you think. And as long as you're working on your craft and you have the chip on your shoulder and you're extra motivated, that is how you're going to have the reign that Larry Holmes had. And that's why he was successful as he was. Talk about maybe a top 5 or top 6 all-time great heavyweights. And that left jab, arguably number 1 in all of boxing history, is not because it was a pity pat jab like Muhammad Ali just threw to keep you at bay. It was one of those stiff jabs that when he put it on your chin, you thought twice of trying to get inside him. And that was why he had the success he had. And that's why he was able to have some success 34 years ago tonight in Atlantic City. Because the second he started to pepper Ray Mercer with that jab, Ray Mercer didn't even think about trying to get inside him. Yeah, no way. No matter how hard he tried, that left jab was just in Mercer's face all night long. And because of it, Mercer couldn't get inside. And a schooling was done with how to use a left jab. Ray Mercer was a student. Larry Holmes was a teacher. And you could probably say later on, Ray Mercer used that to his experience against guys like Holyfield and Lennox Lewis himself, because he was using that jab the same way Holmes did. As it was said, you don't go 12 rounds with Larry Holmes or watch a 12-round fight with Larry Holmes and not know the importance of having a left jab, because nobody had it quite like him. And that's why he had the success that he had. And it was 34 years ago tonight in Atlantic City, where Larry Holmes, probably his finest hour after the Michael Spinks losses, putting on a jabbing clinic to the young upstart Ray Mercer as a 2.5-1 underdog, winning essentially a 10 rounds to 2 unanimous decision in a fight where basically someone gave Ray Mercer the pen and paper to take notes on how to do the left jab, and it was Larry Holmes who showed Ray Mercer what to do with the jab. Tough guy was Ray Mercer, but a genuine all-time great was Larry Holmes, still criminally underrated because of the era he came in after Ali and before the 90s, but he put his name in the 90s when he beat Ray Mercer and said to the whole world, I'm still great. And that's what he did that night. Some of the fundamentals Larry Holmes had to be successful, and he had a lot of fundamentals, not just the left jab, many other things. That's why fighters don't succeed as much as this guy did. And that's why he had the reign he had. And that's why he had the success he had. And that's why he's an all-time great in the heavyweight division. Probably the top, definitely top 10 at the least. Probably higher, somewhere in the middle, maybe top six or seven. But it's because of the fundamentals. It's because of the ring smarts. It was because of the experience. And most importantly, that left jab. If we have the 80-plus inch reach he had, and you can use that jab to your reach and jab to your advantage to keep the opponent on the outside, that's why he was successful. Now, one of the more successful things Larry Holmes did was after he lost to Mike Tyson in '88, he openly predicted Mike Tyson's downfall. And what happened the day before, Larry Holmes was spot on. Because it was the day before that, one of the more pop culture scenes took place in the courthouse in Marion County, Indiana, where it was Mike Tyson being found guilty of the charge he was found with. I'm not going to use that word because I don't like to use that word at all. Everybody knows what it was. But Larry Holmes predicted it. A lot of people try to prevent Mike Tyson from getting to that point. He wouldn't listen. And that's why he was found guilty of what he's found guilty of, and had to do 3 years in prison out there in Indiana. It was so polarizing because this thing was all over the place. I'll acknowledge that. They talk about from the fans to the legal analysts you see on televisions, among many other things. But the downfall was coming, and he hit the bottom in a different way. And that was the end. Everyone's going to point to this as the reason why Mike Tyson was never the same coming out. Problem is, he was on his way down before he went to prison. The day he fired Kevin Rooney, that was it. The day he fired, excuse me, I apologize. The day he fired Kevin Rooney was the day Mike Tyson's career was dead. He got 2 fake wins over Frank Bruno and Carl Williams. Fake contenders, honestly. Then we know what happened in Tokyo, Japan, which I'm going to talk about on Wednesday night. Got fake wins over Henry Tillman and Alex Stewart. And then the 2-fight series with Donovan Razor Ruddock. Then he fakes the rib injury to Duck Evander Holyfield in 1991. And then this happens. The downfall was beginning well before his time in the Indiana State Penitentiary. It was coming. And what happened on this day just circumvented the pop culture, not just boxing or not just sports, the pop culture, to where everyone want to know what really happened in terms of him, in terms of his career, and in terms of what happened during the legal process. It's simple. It was no plea agreement. He was found guilty of whatever he was doing in that room, and whatever he did in that room, he was guilty of it. And there's no other way to sugarcoat it. Because we have cowards and parasites defending this thing when it comes to Mike Tyson. Here's the problem. He was found guilty. It was no plea agreement. There was no, okay, this happened or that happened or whatever behind a grand jury. Mike Tyson was found guilty in a court of law doing something he had no business doing. And because he was found guilty of doing something he had no business doing, that's why he wound up the way he did. It's because he had no business being in Indiana. He had no business doing whatever the frick he was doing with that lady. And because of it, and whatever happened in that room, that's why what happened on that day when he was found guilty happened. And we have parasites in the fight community and cowards in the fight community who try to use every excuse in the book. Here's 3 things wrong with us. This is too easy. He had no business being in Indiana with any woman. He had a $30 million payday against Evander Holyfield, which he ducked because he faked a rib injury. And because of all of that, that's why everything happened the way it did. And why did it? Because he did not want to listen to anybody. And when he let go of the old team Tyson, who kept him under wraps, and after he sent him out the door for Don King and this crony crew, you knew this was coming. Even his new trainer, Aaron Snowell, said, I got a head case here. And that's what Mike Tyson was. He didn't want to be bothered. That's why what took place the day before, 34 years ago this week in Indianapolis happened. And it was such a phenomenon. Every freaking network talked about it. I mean, this was before the whole O.J. Simpson thing, and we know what happened there. This was as talked about as O.J. Simpson's, and even more, maybe not as much, as more boxing and the whole pop culture, because a whole different dynamic with O.J. Simpson. But this was as talked about as O.J. Simpson was, and because of it, it became one of those polarizing events. The whole legal process, from the accusations to all the testimonies to the grand jury to the trial to the verdict, just as much as O.J. Simpson was. That's what this was when it comes to Mike Tyson. And it goes once again to show that if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and do the wrong things and you don't think straight, expect that to happen. Larry Holmes blunt said it. This was going to happen. He was proven right. And people hate Larry Holmes for it. You can hate Larry Holmes all you want. But Larry Holmes said it spot on after Mike Tyson knocked him out. That's what he was headed toward. Holmes said, I didn't want it to happen to him. He said, I did not want this to happen to him. But it did. It's because Mike Tyson had no business being in Indiana. He had no business being around women. He had no business taking women to hotel rooms and doing whatever the frick he did, because he had a $30 million payday against Evander Holyfield in November 1991. But because Evander Holyfield was never intimidated by Mike Tyson fakes the rib injury, goes to Indiana, does what he does, winds up being found guilty, and has to do 3 years in the penitentiary. Just as polar, not to the level of what O.J. Simpson was, because O.J. Simpson involved a high-level chase. I mean, it didn't get to that point. But it was just as talked about as O.J. Simpson's was, because it was that thing also. Everyone wanted to know what's going to happen with Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was a pop culture figure at that point. And the parasites and the cowards today that use every excuse to defend Mike Tyson because of what happened in Indianapolis says a lot about their lack of humanity and the fact that they're just pure born cowards. Why was he in Indianapolis? Why was he with a woman? Why was he doing what he did in a hotel room with her? And why did he fake a rib injury to duck Evander Holyfield? Because that's what happened in the whole situation. And because of it, everything caught up to him. You lost out on $30 million. Let's start with that. I mean, he eventually got it back, but we know the story about the rest of it. Could have got the $30 million then and just retired in peace, because Holyfield would have beat you anyways at that point. Just get the $30 million, go away in peace, and just never be heard of ever again. But instead, he had to go through all of this, wind up having to spend 3 years in the Indiana penitentiary, wind up on the Indiana registry list forever. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's why Mike Tyson's career and life at that point hit the bottom. He's wound up being a pop culture icon eventually, but for all the weird reasons. And he he's done some nice stuff lately, especially with a podcast he had a few years ago. But maybe in hindsight, when you look at all of this, if he was serious about retiring after his famous loss, I'm going to talk about Wednesday night. If he was serious about retiring after that famous loss, He should have gone through with the Holyfield fight in 91, collect that $30 million guarantee, and just gone away. Because one, he wasn't going to beat Evander Holyfield in 1991. And two, he would have been financially satisfied to where he would have just been away, gone away, and not have to be seen or heard from, which would have been to his benefit. Because he said it countless times, sometimes I wish I was never existed. But remember, Mike Tyson, you faked a rib injury to avoid Evander Holyfield in 1991, and then did what you did in Indianapolis. Think about that for a minute. If you were serious about everything you said, you would have gone through that fight in 91, and you probably had your butt handed to you by Evander Holyfield, because Holyfield was never afraid of you, just like Buster Douglas wasn't. But that's why picking the people you surround yourself with, especially when you're under the lights, under the microscope, like Mike Tyson was, is crucial. And because he made poor choices in that regard, that's why everything turned out the way it did 34 years ago. It was a ricochet effect from the night he sent the old Team Tyson out the door to bring in the Don King and the cronies and the rest. But at the end of the day, whose fault was it all of that happened? It wasn't Don King's. It certainly wasn't Kevin Rooney's. It was Mike Tyson's. And that's where the cowardice of Mike Tyson fans show, because you make the decisions. Mike Tyson was a mature adult. He made the choice to duck Evander Holyfield and fake a rib injury to do what he did in Indianapolis. And because of it, and how everything turned up in the courtroom, that's why the verdict took place, and that's why he did the time. The parasites and the cowards are the reason why we've had the discussion. And how you guys gassed him up for the longest time, and I'll talk about this more later on, how the parasites and the cowards gassed up Mike Tyson for the longest time was a key piece of why Mike Tyson's downfall after he beat Michael Spinks started. But at the end of the day, he made his own decision, because he was a mature adult, from when he faked the rib injury to avoid Evander Holyfield to what took place in Indianapolis with that woman in that room and went up in the courtroom and being found guilty. The rest of it takes care of itself. And the parasites called Mike Tyson fans who want to try and defend this shows their heartlessness, shows their cowardice, shows their despicable spinelessness, because they're just despicable people. How can you defend what he did in that room? And all the excuses you use to defend him says more about you than it does what took place in that room or the legal process. Because I say it again, he was found guilty. There was no plea agreement. He was found guilty. And once you're found guilty, you lose a battle and you lose a war. That's what happened to Mike Tyson. And the parasites and the cowards who still defend him continue to resort to your lowest forms of life, because that's who you are at the end of the day. And that's why I stopped dealing with that fan base. Plain and simple. But it was a polarizing event 34 years ago. Not quite to the tune of O.J. Simpson a couple years later, but it was close, and it was certainly one that the newscast wanted to talk about, given the pop culture status that Mike Tyson had. And it was 34 years ago. He was rightfully found guilty and had to do the time. And we know what happened the rest of him. We know what happened to him the rest of the way, and the rest is history. And I conclude with, speaking of guys whose history is basically history, but trying to cling onto it. Here we are again, another conversation about Deontay Wilder, who still uses excuses for his failures in the 3-fight series with Tyson Fury. Well, let's start with all these excuses. Well, let's start with the obvious one. Here's one thing everybody misses. He uses some bogus costume he walked into the ring with, which I don't know what that's all about. Then he accuses Fury of cheating. Then of course, the whole shebang of the first fight of the long count that wasn't, Jack Dempsey is turning in his grave. But Deontay Wilder, like Mike Tyson, whenever something hits the downturn or goes the wrong way, they can't take it like men. Especially that fan base of both fighters who use every coward excuse in the book. And we have it again with Deontay Wilder, especially when we talk about what he did in England, prepping up for the fight with Jarek Chisora, going after that individual on that Talk Sports show. And over there, I can't remember the individual's name, but here's the thing that kills Deontay Wilder. It's the same thing that killed Mike Tyson, the respective fan bases, and everyone associated. It wasn't the fact they lost those fights, and in Wilder's case, the trilogy with Fury. He was wiped out and wiped out clean as if he didn't exist. And that still kills him to this day. It wasn't the fact he lost that fight. They fought 33 total rounds. Deontay Wilder won 4 of them. 3 of them he floored him in, but couldn't keep him down. And the 4th one was basically a Fury giveaway. But the rest of it, anything you said Tyson Fury did to him, he did it. And it still kills Deontay Wilder and Deontay Wilder fans to this day because they can't take the fact that they're whatever the word they want to use for it was humanized and exposed to where they're irrelevant. And because they were humanized and irrelevant, and the truth was told in that trilogy with Wilder and Fury, they don't know how to accept it. And because they don't know how to accept it, that's why we have everything that we have. Deontay Wilder may be a bigger front runner than Mike Tyson ever was. And outside of the first Luis Ortiz fight, we never saw Deontay Wilder push. And the only reason why he came back against Luis Ortiz was because Ortiz has made a tactical error. That's the only reason why. And Ortiz probably like 85 years old when he fought. Got a lost track of him when he was 55 years old. He was probably 85 years old when Deontay Wilder fought him. But Deontay Wilder may be a bigger front runner than most of the front runners we ever saw. Was more protected than some of those fighters who were protected. And once they put him against a guy who wasn't afraid of him and surpassed him in terms of skill and ability, it was the end. And it wasn't the fact it was the end. It was the end with many, many exclamation points. And the fact he didn't really have a chance in this trilogy and was out there in the open kills him. Because not only that happened, remember, this happened after the whole DAZN contract fiasco with Anthony Joshua. We know what that was all about. Then he takes Tyson Fury at a time when there were questions about Tyson Fury. Remember, he was in and out of a couple of drug rehabs, popped dirty, and basically got a win over a fate of Vladimir Klitschko. And there were all kinds of questions about Fury. Tyson Fury rose up from the ashes from everything he went through to basically own Deontay Wilder times 50. And in every round he won, maybe in hindsight, I could have scored every one of those rounds 10-8 for Fury and more because he was that so far ahead of Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder can't take it because it was that kind of wipeout. It was a boxing lesson. It was a beating. It was tactics. Everything Fury did to him, he did it. And he said it. And he backed it up. And it kills Deontay Wilder to this day. Anytime somebody brings up Tyson Fury to Deontay Wilder, he's always going to act like the world is out to get him. You lost all 3 fights fair and square. Actually, really, it was 0-3. Officially, it was 0-2-1, but boxing politics gave Deontay Wilder a draw, which anybody with a brain knows Fury outboxed his ears off. But anything Tyson Fury did to Deontay Wilder, he did it times 50. Anything he said he was going to do, he did it. And he did it to the tune where you could probably say almost every round of that Fury Wilder trilogy that he won was 10-8 or even greater, because it was that one-sided. It was that one-sided, and Deontay Wilder fanboys can't accept it. You lost fair and square. You was never in Tyson Fury's league, and the trilogy proved it. What more do you want? There was no long count. There was no glove manipulation. You just lost fair and square all 3 fights, despite one being an official draw. And you just can't take it. And because of it, your career wound up the way it did. And there was a reason for it. Because you were overly protected. And when you turned down the contract for the Anthony Joshua situation, we know what that's all about. And landed this fight, and just really, aside of the 4 knockdowns in 3 of the rounds, really no-showed. That should tell you something at the end of the day about you. And maybe it is, you weren't really all that. You wore a belt to mask your lack of skill in certain areas. And once a belt was taken off and you was fully exposed, it was over. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. Tyson Fury owned Deontay Wilder times 50 in that trilogy. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. You can talk about your excuses all you want. The results is there, and it's over. Now, I mean, good luck down the line. And you can get mad all you want about it. You can become Twitter warriors all you want. But the end result was Fury owned Wilder. He didn't need to resort to any dirty tactics. He didn't need to resort to shortcuts, or he didn't need to help the boxing politics. He knew he was better than Wilder, and he showed it in that trilogy. And at the end of the day, that's the end result. And it wasn't the fact he beat him. He owned him. I haven't seen ownership like that maybe forever in the heavyweight division, because he was tailor-made for him. You can nitpick it all you want. You can say about that supposed long count that wasn't, or the supposed glove situation that wasn't. The point was Tyson Fury owned Deontay Wilder so bad, Deontay Wilder is irrelevant and erased from history, if there even had a history. What was left of him has been erased because he couldn't hang when it mattered and when it counted. And I wish you good luck in April, because I got 2 words that's coming your way, and that's in the form of War Chisora. And they're gonna be cheering the tunes up there in London when you face that lovable British warrior Jared Chisora. And he beats what's left of you and puts you out for good. What are you going to do then? End of story. What about to the days where fighters took losses like men and stopped making excuses? That's what's happened to Deontay Wilder. Just full of excuses. And his fanboys and the cowards they are no better. It's not the fact he lost. He lost fair and square. And it's over with. Move on. And on that note, that'll wrap up this edition of All Era Sports with Sirhan. No show tomorrow night. I will be back Wednesday night to talk about a famous night in the history of pop culture. Not just boxing, not just sports, but it impacted pop culture in every single which way possible. And something I think you might know what it is, but I'm going to save it because I'm going to need an extra day to prepare it. But everyone's going to be warned in advance. There's going to be a global flood warning, because I'm going to put a fan base into some serious tears. We're about to talk about and put more truth to them, because after so many years, it's time to deliver. And I'll deliver it Wednesday night. And as always, if you missed this show or any others in the past, You can catch them on the iHeartRadio and the Apple apps if you have them on your phones, especially the iPhone users. And if you watch the video version, we'll have these gloves. You can always watch that on the X platform, the Facebook platform, and the Spotify app if you have that. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. Always take care of yourself first. Always respect other people's boundaries. And always set strong boundaries and don't let anyone walk all over them. All the good things will happen. Always set healthy boundaries for yourself and don't let anyone walk all over you, because if you do, that's it. That was how Mike Tyson landed in prison. And on that note, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves and God bless. I'll be back Wednesday night for the Super Show.